What is up, everybody? My name is Jericholic8704, here to give you another installment of Raw Is Jericholic8704. Now, I apologize for not really doing anything over the past couple weeks. I apologize for not doing anything else besides the Raw review. I've just been really busy. School's starting soon. I'm moving back next week to my dorm because I have to do my, pre-employment training for my RA position. So, it's going to be kind of crazy the next couple days. But that is a plus, I guess. I'm going to be in a single for this upcoming year so I can do more audio commentaries. I had a roommate. I'm sure, the last thing he wants is his roommate talking about wrestling. But anyway, let's dive right into this Raw before I reveal too much about my personal life. Anyway, Raw, August 4th, 2003 from Vancouver, British Columbia. And it's kind of ironic that we're back in Canada. We were in Montreal maybe 2 weeks ago, or maybe even a week ago. Was it last week that we were in Montreal? I can't remember. No, it wasn't, because last week we were in the Staples Center, which, that makes sense because, Staples Center's on the West Coast and then British Columbia is only, further up north, but still, you'd think like they just came out of Canada and then they went back to Canada. So I found that just interesting. I don't know. So anyway, we have an opening promo, Shane McMahon. So Shane comes out, the crowd's, kind of likes him, and then he says he's going to finish what he started with Kane last week, and he says he's going to be in his face, making his entire life a living hell for the rest of his life. Bischoff's music hits, and he says he sympathizes with Shane. He understands the damage Kane can do, but he says he can't have Kane and Shane face each other tonight on Raw because it's not what Vince wants, and Bischoff says he'll only do what Vince wants, and Vince wants RVD versus Kane at SummerSlam. So Bischoff also says that Shane must leave under Vince McMahon's orders, and he must be banned from the building, and security must escort him out. And Bischoff says he's going to let Shane leave on his own power if he leaves right now. And then Shane just says, fuck that, I'm not going to do it. And then a great moment occurred. Bischoff was like, okay, well, there's a reason someone like me is in charge. It's because I can maintain my emotion. And you cannot maintain your emotion, Shane McMahon. And if you don't, and you get physical with me, I have 2 words for you. And then people in the crowd shouted, suck it. And then Bischoff went, black belt. I died. I laughed so hard. We all know Bischoff. Is his karate thing legitimate, or is it just like a funny thing they made up? I never really knew. I kind of just went along with it. If it is legit, then, good for him. If it's not, that's fine. I don't care. But, he just said black belt because that's his whole gimmick that he's, a karate king or whatever. And I thought that was hilarious. That was a great line. So then Austin comes out. The crowd goes absolutely nuts for him. He tells Shane to fuck off, and Austin says he and Bischoff are trying to be nice, and he tries to get Shane to get out. Then Austin says, okay, you're clearly not going to get out, so how about we have Bischoff and Shane one-on-one, no holds barred, here tonight on Raw. Bischoff is mad, but then he accepts after complaining for a bit. Then we had our first match of the night, Bubba Ray Dudley versus Rene Dupree. Bubba and Rene just start fist fighting, and then 30 seconds into this match, we get a distraction spot. They kind of blew their load, really early into the match. So they kind of going back and forth. The match is pretty boring, pretty dumb, pretty lame. And then Sylvain tries to run in and clothesline Bubba. He ducks and then takes out Rene Dupree. So the ref is dealing with Sylvain Grenier, and then Devon, after weeks, 3 consecutive weeks of getting smacked in the face with this damn flagpole, he comes in with the flag and he just whacks the shit out of Rene Dupree. He just takes that flagpole and just bounces it off of his head. The smack was enormous. And this one, when it hit Devon's head, it was like a high-pitched smack. This was like a bone crushing blow, you know what I mean? And I was I even heard it, and I was like, damn, that had to have hurt. So Bubba hits the Bubba Bomb, he gets the 3, and then the Dudley celebrate, and the camera pans back to La Resistance, regrouping and everything, and Rene Dupree's face is just all covered in blood because there's just this giant gash on the top of his head from where the flagpole hit him. It looked brutal. It looked like it sucked. Match was stupid, though. I'll give it a dud. Then we had backstage segment with Evolution. Orton asked Triple H how his groin is doing, which I just find they really, this entire show pretty much anytime Triple H was on the screen, it was dedicated to telling the audience that Triple H was injured with a groin injury, which was legit. Triple H had this groin injury that he actually had it for a good amount of time, pretty much for the entire month of August and pretty much the entire month of September. Triple H switched his gear to like these weird, I can't even say biker shorts, because like biker shorts, are like above the thigh. Like these went down to his knees. He looked like they were like long tights that a seamstress just cut off at the knee, if that makes sense. They looked so ridiculous, and it was, everyone knows the Triple H groin tear phase. But anyway, Triple H, is just like, my groin, it's not really feeling all that well. And then Bischoff comes in, he's freaking out, and he's like, Triple H, I need to talk to you. And then it fades to commercial break. So then we come back, and then it's Scott Steiner coming out, and he has a match with Randy Orton. Orton comes out saying he can feel the tension in the arena, and this is a great line. He said, because more people came to see Randy Orton's nipples than Stacy Keibler's nipples. So for some weird reason, this angered Scott Steiner, and he just beat the shit out of Orton. So Orton tries to do some clotheslines, and Steiner no-sells, and then he eventually hits him with a drop kick for the heat. Orton uses Stacy as a shield to get heat on Steiner. Then Lawler says Orton will run into a lot of attitude adjustments throughout his career. That was a very, very awesome moment. Just King and Coach were bored out of their skulls. They were just going back and forth, and, Coach says, oh, this Orton kid, he's so cocky, so arrogant, and then King's like, hell, he'll run into a couple attitude adjustments in his career. I think he's ran into too many attitude adjustments now that I think about it. Steiner eventually got a comeback, and then he did. There were a couple scary spots on the night. This was the second one. The first being the flagpole to the face that, pretty much cracked Rene Dupree's skull. This one looked rough as well. Steiner did a belly-to-belly to Orton off of the top rope. And as we know, Steiner is a genetic freak. He's strong as hell. He's a big dude. The thing about it is Orton is not a small guy himself. Orton is tall. He's probably like 6'3", 6'4". He probably weighs 250, 255, 260. He's a decent sized guy. He threw Orton over his head, and Orton landed literally head first, shoulder first. He got folded up like an accordion. This looked like it sucked. He landed right on his head, and that looked brutal. Then we had Test invading. Test was wearing the world's ugliest t-shirt I've ever seen in my entire life. Even worse than those shirts that Lawler would wear at the announce table. This shirt was 10 times worse. It was like a leopard print fire shirt. I don't even know what it was. It was this weird mix of colors and a weird design that made him look like the biggest tool in the world, which was great because that's Test's gimmick. But, this shirt was hideous. So Steiner throws him over the top rope, and then Test gets up and he starts selling. This selling was the absolute highlight of the show. And then he throws Steiner over the top rope, and he, yells at him and turns around, eats an RKO, and he loses the match as Orton gets the 1, 2, 3. Half a star, nothing all that great. Nothing worth seeing. It's just the usual Raw match. Nothing great. Then after the match, Bischoff is back with Evolution, or I guess Triple H and Ric Flair. And he says, we got a deal. And Triple H is like, yeah, don't shit your pants. Calm down. We got a deal. So then we had another backstage segment with Hurricane, Rosie, and Christian. Rosie says he's ready to be a superhero in training. Hurricane says, you're not ready yet because you don't have Hurra powers. Christian comes up and basically says Rosie sucks and that he'll beat Hurricane tonight in their one-on-one match. So he eventually just walks away, and then Hurricane turns around and he sees Rosie carrying a box that says SHIT. Now, it doesn't just say shit. It's an acronym. It's S.H.I.T. So I guess you can get away with, making an acronym of the word shit. Because, obviously you can't say it. Because at one point Hurricane did. He saw the box and he was like, holy shit. And of course they bleeped the shit out. I guess you can get away with just making the acronym because, on subtitles, if the word shit pops up, it's kind of bleeped out, or, they have, the 2 asterisks in between for the H and the I. But, it was an acronym, and it just read shit on the box. So I thought that was, kind of funny. So then after that, we see a little weird backstage segment of Shane McMahon warming up for his match. Shane McMahon came out in a button-down t-shirt. I mean, not button-down t-shirt. A button-down shirt, button-down striped shirt, and, jeans and some, nice shoes and everything. He didn't, and obviously he didn't know he had this match, but you'd think, I know I'd have to suspend my disbelief to believe that, Shane McMahon had clothes that were wrestling appropriate for the night. But, like, God forbid, like, you couldn't have just given him some shorts, a t-shirt, and some, like, knee pads and elbow pads. Like, you couldn't have given him that much. This guy's coming to the ring. And I know it's a no-holds-barred match, and I know Shane McMahon is not a trained wrestler. And, I mean, Bischoff was wrestling in, like, sweatpants and a t-shirt. But, I mean, that would have been fine, too. I mean, just give him some shorts, a t-shirt, and then give him some, like, wrist tape or something. I don't know. Just make him look like he's a threat. This guy's warming up. He's doing stretches. He's doing, like, he's punching the air and everything. In, like, button down and jeans. Like, I don't get it. Like, what about that is threatening? So, whatever. Then we had a backstage segment with Bischoff's office. Now, here's the great thing about Bischoff's office. Now, anytime they have any sort of set, you obviously know it's not like there's a room there. It's just the backstage area, and they just use, like, curtains and poles to create, like, some sort of square section with the camera to create the illusion of the office. Usually they do a good job with this, or they actually use an actual room within the arena, but sometimes they have to improvise. This office looked like total shit. Like, it was so bad, and, like, you could see that the curtains, like, the camera didn't pan down enough to the point where, like, you could see the curtains, like, you could see the walls protruding outside the curtains, because, like, it was just made so poorly. It looked like it was made in 5 seconds, like this makeshift office. And, like, there's this random door, and it looked so bad. He was talking to Rodney Mack for some weird reason. I don't even know why, but Rodney Mack just kind of pissed off, and, Bischoff was just standing there alone. Austin shows up, and he says, Bischoff says Evolution will come down to the ring with him tonight for his match with Shane McMahon, and in exchange, he made Goldberg and Triple H a no disqualification match so Evolution can interfere. And Austin is angry about this. Then we got Hurricane versus Christian. The two start going back and forth. Hurricane does some wacky superhero shit, which trips up Christian. Christian cuts him off for a sec, and then he goes for an axe handle, and then Hurricane goes for a chokeslam, but Christian gets out of it. He goes for a Shining Wizard, but Christian is able to duck, and he rolls him up and gets the tights for the win. I mean, it was a dud. It was like 5 seconds. What more can I say about this match? So Hurricane tries to plead with the ref, like, hey, he cheated, yada, 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 and then Christian decides he's just going to beat up Hurricane some more, so he just, he knocks him down, starts kicking him, and then all of a sudden Hurricane's theme hits again. Christian doesn't make anything of it, and then we have Rosie coming out in his, superhero in training outfit. He has, like, this gray t-shirt that says superhero in training on it. He's got, like, these nylon shorts and a cape and, like, a little, headband over his eyes and all that stuff. So he looks, completely ridiculous. Christian goes for an unprettier, turns around and sees Rosie, and Rosie hits, a fall-away slam? I can't remember what move he hit on him. He hit some slam move, and Christian comes out of the ring, and then Hurricane's like, all right, I like this. So they do, like, a superhero pose, and everyone's happy. Then we had Goldberg versus Ric Flair. They had, what was great about this is, as we all know, during Goldberg's entrance, it tracks him coming out of his dressing room all the way to gorilla position to the ramp to the ring. It's this whole contrived entrance where the camera's following him the entire time. So they have, a little door that has Goldberg's name on it to signify that this is Goldberg's, changing space in his locker room and everything. So they had this one guy knock on the door, and they're like, hey, Goldberg, it's time. Like, they did this a couple times where they have some dude just knock on the door. I always thought it was kind of dumb, but, whatever. So they made this guy do it. This guy, he looked like he was 5 years old. He was probably like 5'4", like 125 pounds. He, like, knocks on the door, like, all just, like, timidly, and he's just like, it's time, and then, like, he turns around, and you could tell he's, like, trying not to laugh. He's like, oh my god, I just got on TV, haha. But, like, you could tell he's, like, trying to keep it all in. It was so funny. I laughed so hard at that. If you want to watch one thing from this Raw, just watch that moment. This guy is just, you could see him starting to smirk as he, like, runs off the camera, and, like, he doesn't, like, casually walk up, knock on the door, and, like, casually walks back. You know what I mean? He just, like, he runs up, knocks on the door, says his little line, and just, like, runs off laughing and everything. So that was really hilarious. Also, one more other thing to note. I think it might have been a bad night for Lillian Garcia, because this was, like, the second consecutive match, because the same thing happened with the Hurricane Christian match, where she, like, forgot to introduce the first person. Like, when it came time for the second person to be introduced, she would be like, the following contest is set for one fall, introducing, like, and just, like, coming down to the ring, or just, like, something like that, like some cover-up. But she just completely forgot, and, like, it's not like she went back and kind of gave him, like, half a jobber entrance, like, the person who was introduced first. She just kind of didn't do it. So I don't know if she was just distracted today. I don't know what her deal was, but I don't know if there was some method to that madness, but whatever. So Triple H comes out and he's on commentary. He said his groin injury was due to an altercation he had with Goldberg, and he said a groin injury for him would be a catastrophe, and he said it would be, quote, like a giraffe with a sore throat. I laughed because dick jokes are always going to get me to laugh because I'm 5 years old. The crowd was pretty into Flair, and they seemed to be anti-Goldberg. It is Canada, after all, quote-unquote, bizarro world. They're going to cheer the heels, boo the faces. Flair gets a chop block, and the crowd fucking erupts because Goldberg is no longer on the offense. So Flair hits some body shots, and Goldberg no-sells. Goldberg slams Flair some more, and like, what's great about Flair is, like, he falls, he gets hit by a back body drop, and, like, Flair's doing that thing where he sits up, and all you hear from Flair is, oh God, oh my God, and, like, just Flair's just wailing, he's all pissed, he's crying in pain and everything. That's what I love about Flair. So Goldberg, brings him back up. Flair hits a thumb to the eye, pretty much in plain sight. The ref just did not do anything. Like, he might have pretended like he didn't see it, but we all know he did. He literally did it right in front of him. So Flair goes to the top rope, and then a great Triple H moment. Flair's on the top rope, and he's notorious for not hitting top rope moves. And Triple H is like, all right, here it is. Flair's got him, when I laughed and howled at that. So Goldberg throws him over the top rope, and, Flair basically just flies all the way to the opposite corner of the ring, and then Goldberg gets in spearing position, and then the crowd starts cheering again because Randy Orton comes down with a chair, and he slides into the ring, and then he, winds up the chair for the chair shot. Randy Orton was basically standing right next to Goldberg, you know what I mean? Like, he literally, I don't know how Goldberg, you can suspend your disbelief, I suppose, but when you factor in peripheral vision, maybe you can assume Goldberg has no peripheral vision whatsoever, but I mean, this guy was running in right beside him. He was right, it wasn't like he snuck in behind Goldberg. He was right next to him. So why Goldberg did not see Randy Orton coming in with a steel chair, I don't know. So Orton wallops him with the chair in the back, and, Flair and Orton double team him. The ref calls for the DQ, and then Triple H goes down to do some more damage. He pulls out a sledgehammer and hits Goldberg right in the stomach. Orton and Flair pick him up again. Triple H measures him for another hammer shot, but then Shawn Michaels comes out and starts beating up Evolution. Triple H bails out of the ring to avoid getting in any sort of physical altercation due to his groin injury. Then Jericho comes out and the crowd erupts for Jericho, and then Kevin Nash comes out and beats up Jericho some more. Then Stone Cold comes out, and then he announces that the main event for SummerSlam will now be an Elimination Chamber match. Triple H versus Goldberg versus Chris Jericho versus Shawn Michaels versus Randy Orton versus Kevin Nash. After he does that, Austin says, all right, now kick each other's asses. And then you just see Flair nod his head, yank a chair out of Triple H's hands, and then he slides into the ring, and then he goes towards Goldberg. He does the slowest, chair over the head walk. When, they're measuring a chair shot, they slowly walk towards someone with the chair raised above their head. So Flair does the slowest one ever. I don't know if he was deliberately doing that or if he was legitimately 55 years old or whatever, however old he was at this point, and just couldn't move that fast. Either way, Goldberg spears the hell out of him, and they bail. They come back from commercial break, and then Shawn Michaels and Kevin Nash are celebrating in the ring, I guess because they get to be an Elimination Chamber match, even though that's, the worst match you could ever think of. But, it's for the world title, so I guess that shows their dedication to the world title, I suppose. Anyway, Coach says that they're going to go down to Terry, who's interviewing Pat Croce. I think that was his name. He was the owner of Slam Ball. And it said Slam Ball was premiering after Raw. Season 2 of Slam Ball was premiering after Raw. Now, I don't remember this show at all. Maybe someone can fill me in, but I guess a spin-off of basketball where all you could do was slam dunk. I mean, I don't know. It looked pretty stupid. But the best part of this was Terry was interviewing him, and he was just so not charismatic and so just a horrible interview. And then they all of a sudden had to cut back to the ring because Jericho came back and started beating up Nash and HBK. And then you even heard Coach say, well, sorry, we had to interrupt you guys, but Chris Jericho's back in the ring. So Chris Jericho beats up both of them for a second, and then Nash boots him and hits him with a jackknife and leaves him laying. Then we had a backstage segment with Evolution. Flair is dying on a cot as the medical doctors, tend to him. Bischoff comes in, he begs Triple H to stay with him, and he's like, please, please, we still have a deal, right? We still have a deal. And Triple H is like, you better fix this or I'm out. And Bischoff's like, I can't fix it. It's Austin's final word. I can't do anything about it. And then Triple H is like, well, it's tough shit, basically. What made this segment even better was underneath like all of the crazy drama of Bischoff and Triple H, you just had Flair going, oh my god, oh it hurts, oh. You just had Flair screaming in the background, which was hilarious. Then we had a women's championship match, Trish Stratus versus Molly Holly. I'm actually kind of upset that this match only went like 5 seconds, because this match probably would have been the best thing on the show. So Molly just gets going and she hits some drop kicks and suplexes and whatnot. Like, she literally just starts beating the shit out of Trish. Like, she gets no offense in at all. Trish hits some roll-ups as her semi-comeback, I guess. Molly goes for a lariat. This is the best part of the match. She goes for a lariat, and Trish does her little matrix spot, and then Molly does the best tumble to the outside of all time. Like, how many times you've seen a guy like miss a clothesline and then just like he falls through the ropes, and it looks so hokey and so fake and so like, you're like, oh, I missed you, now I'm gonna stumble out of the ring, like bum da bum da bum bow, and like just like he just tumbles out. And like, when Molly missed, she dove through the ropes, and it looked brutal. It looked like what it looked like was Molly legitimately was trying to run Trish over with her forearm, and because she had such a head of steam, when she didn't make contact with Trish as like, a form of resistance, she just crashed through the ropes. Like, she couldn't slow herself down. So it looked really, really good. That was a really, really good spot. So they start brawling out outside, and Victoria invades. She interferes, and her and Trish get into it, which causes a DQ. She slams Trish on the outside of the ring. Molly Holly and Victoria eventually get back in the ring and double team Trish. Gail Kim comes in to make the save and fights both of them off, and she helps Trish up only to turn on her. So we have, basically the women's division, with Jazz being out, the women's division in 2003 basically consists of Trish, Victoria, Molly Holly, Gail Kim. Now, why you would turn Gail Kim heel, I don't really know why, because Trish is really now your only top babyface in the women's division. And I know Lita's still injured, because she had when she had a broken neck. But Lita doesn't come back, I don't think, till like early September. So, they still have a month. I mean, maybe they've known that Lita was coming back around this time, so it makes sense. But, I mean, I wouldn't pull the trigger on Gail Kim just yet. I mean, she just got there, too. Anyway, so that was my one problem with that, but whatever. Then we had a backstage segment with Kane's van and the security guard around it. What was great about this is Shane McMahon wants a piece of Kane so bad that he just darts towards the van. You just hear him off screen yelling, and he really doesn't do anything at all. I mean, granted, he can't get into the van, so he can't do anything. But all he does really is just smack the van a couple times. He really doesn't do jack shit, and Kane just kind of stands there just like, what are you doing, you dumbass? He looked like such a loser. So then we had a quick cut to the locker room, and Lance Storm is seen talking to someone, but the someone is off camera. Lance Storm says he admits it, he's boring, he realizes it, so he came to this person for help. And it was Goldust, and Goldust said, well, if we're going to make you not boring anymore, it's going to be one hell of a time, yada, 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 haha. It wasn't even, like, really, this accomplished nothing. And what was weird is we went right back to the backstage segment of Kane's ambulance. So Kane's in this little, house arrest van or whatever you want to call it, ambulance, whatever you want to say. And Bischoff comes up to the 4 security guards who are in front of him, and it's like, hey, Shane McMahon's going crazy, you should go get him. So these 4 security guards, like absolute dumbasses, decide to listen to Bischoff and run towards Shane McMahon wherever he is supposed to be. And then Bischoff pulls out some keys and he teases that he's going to unlock Kane's door. Then we had the undisputed highlight of the night, Rob Van Dam versus Chris Jericho. RVD starts off strong and hits all of his RVD heel kicks. Jericho hits a thumb to the eye for the heat. Jericho goes for a stinger splash and misses and goes face first into the post and then falls out of the ring. RVD goes for a dive outside and Jericho ducks and then scoop slams RVD onto the floor. Jericho gets the heat for a while. The heat segment in this match was kind of boring a little bit. That's what drove this match down from being really, really good. Even though it really picked up at the end. If the match was more consistent, I would have given this definitely a higher rating, even though I did give it a pretty good rating to begin with. But yeah, no, Jericho got heat, and, it was fine, and then RVD made a slight comeback, and he eventually hit a suplex to Jericho, and it was, the typical suplex spot where, RVD's outside the ring on the apron, Jericho's inside the ring, and he lifts him over the ropes and then onto the floor. And what sucked about this for Jericho was RVD fell and he just landed right on the back of his head. Jericho, he basically flipped over, landed on his feet, but it's not like he landed on his feet and then sold it and just fell over. The force at which he fell, he landed on his feet, but he had to tumble down because of the speed he was falling. So Jericho fell, and then he fell right in front of the security wall, and then he he stumbled and hit the wall face first, and folded up like an accordion. It looked like it sucked. It looked like his lower back got crunched in. Not a pretty fall for either guy, so that looked like it hurt so bad. So the two eventually it wasn't like they were down for that long. They both got up pretty quickly and then started hitting big moves. Then it was just a series of comebacks, and after this, the match was really, really awesome. Jericho goes for the walls, and then RVD cradles him for a near fall. RVD goes for Rolling Thunder, and Jericho gets the knees up, and then RVD charges Jericho, and then Jericho clubs him right in the face. That was an awesome moment. RVD just charges at him with a head of steam, and then he didn't it wasn't like a fancy elbow or anything. Jericho just left his arm out and just smacked him right in the face. That was awesome. He goes for a lion salt and he misses. RVD hits a heel kick, and then he goes for the 5-star and then misses again. Jericho tries a roll up for the near fall, and then Jericho tries to go for the walls, but RVD gets to the ropes. Jericho does that whole thing where he thinks he won. He turns around. RVD hits Jericho with a kick after Jericho jumps off the ropes, and then a split-legged moonsault is hit on Jericho by RVD for the win. This is 3.5 stars. Very, very, very fun match. Maybe it's not that great. Maybe it's not as good as I make it out to be. But I guess maybe just compared to this show and what all the other matches I've seen on Raw in the past couple weeks, this match was gold. I loved everything about it. It was a really, really fun match. So afterwards, RVD's celebrating. Jericho's left in the ring. He's all pissed. He says everything is a conspiracy against him. He says he lost this match because of Kevin Nash. He says, "Big Sexy, you're a big stupid son of a bitch." And then Jericho says he's Mr. Canada and he does not get disrespected. The crowd was so into Jericho. Not only was he a heel, but he's Canadian as well, so double whammy. Jericho says it's Nash's fault and he's going to get revenge on him. He says he's going to take the one thing Nash loves more than anything. He challenges him to a hair versus hair match. Then we had our main event, Eric Bischoff versus Shane McMahon. Before the entrances, Kane's van is shown to be completely empty, so Eric Bischoff did indeed free Kane. Then we had, as Bischoff was making his entrance, they had their little ad for YJ Stinger. You gotta feel the sting. I do remember that product being on Raw all the time. I remember that and that body spray. You remember those bod commercials where it was like, hot bod, I want your bod. It was just these black and white things with these ripped dudes working out, and all these girls were just singing this song and watching. They were so stupid. It was so dumb. And then but it was the bod body spray. What a stupid name. You want some bod body spray? That does not roll off the tongue. You want some Old Spice, you want some Axe, that makes, that rolls off the tongue, it's bod. What? What a dumb name. And then, but again, YJ Singer, that's the topic at hand. I remember that vividly. I think Triple H was in those commercials. It was when they would do those, and now the Raw rebound, and now the Raw rebound is brought to you by YJ Stinger. And then it's for that intense, sugary taste, you gotta feel the sting, in that usual, WWE announcer voice. So, but yeah, no, YJ Stinger. I remember, it wasn't it was at, your local grocery store. I remember I was at the beach with my family on vacation. Here's the funny side story about YJ Stinger. This video has gone on a lot longer than I expected it to. We're at 30 minutes in. Jesus Christ, this is going to be the longest review ever. Anyway, but it's worth it. So, I don't even know if the story's worth it, but whatever. Let me just get to the story, goddammit. So, I remember I was at the beach and we went to this convenience store because our beach condo was, there was this little convenience store. It's kind of like a Walgreens, for lack of a better term. It's called Happy Harry's or something, Happy Harold's or something like that. I don't know. It was basically a Walgreens. And, I was 6 or 7 years old. I was, still, it was 2003, 2004. I was watching Raw, I was super, into everything, even even the YJ Stinger, because that's just something that was associated with Raw. And as you all know, I was a huge Raw kid, anti-SmackDown, all Raw. Anyway. I remember seeing YJ Stinger in like, one of the fridges that has, all the cold drinks in it. Like when you're at like a local drugstore, you have like those walls of, frozen drinks and, ice cold drinks. And I was like, oh, YJ Stinger. I'm like, Mom, Dad, can I buy, like, can you get this for me? This is like, because, like, my mom was like, she let myself and my brothers, like, okay, you guys can get a drink and a snack. So my drink of choice was a YJ Stinger, not because I needed a boost of energy, not because I loved, 600 million grams of sugar. I just, Triple H drank it. It was on Raw. Hell yeah, I want this. So my dad looked at it beforehand. My dad and both my dad and my mom looked at it. And they're like, okay, YJ Stinger. And they looked, and like, nutrition fact was literally like one can is like 72 grams of sugar. And they're like, Tommy, are you sure you want this? And I'm like, yeah, no, definitely. I definitely want it. So I buy it, and I, open the can. I took a drink, and I did the classic little kid pull where I was like, I had one sip, and I just had this instant, like, sugar, like, flow throughout my body. Like, it was just, and like, I didn't even take a big gulp. And I mean, like, who doesn't like soda? You know what I mean? Soda's great and everything. I mean, I don't drink it that often, but like, I'm always down for a nice Sprite or a Mountain Dew or a Coke. Sure, those have a lot of sugar in them, but it's a balance. This was basically just all sugar in like carbonated water. It was one of the worst things I've ever tasted in my entire life. And because, I felt so bad that my parents had bought it for me, and it was a little more expensive than other drinks, I took a sip of it and I was like, I like it. And like my parents both knew that I was totally lying. They went back and bought me like, an apple juice or something. So that was my experience with YJ Stinger. In case any of you if you've ever drank YJ Stinger before, it's the worst thing I've ever tasted in my life. I'm not a big fan of energy drinks or like, sugary drinks like that. Not a big fan. I'm really not a big fan of anything besides, water, apple juice, and like lemonade. Those are pretty much the only things I drink. So, anything other than that, I'm pretty much not about. Although I do occasionally dabble in soda. Why am I talking about this? God, this is what I get for recording this at 12:45 in the morning. Anyway, so Eric Bischoff and Shane McMahon. Bischoff does like a little karate exhibit before the match. He has like some nerd accompanying him to the ring. He's holding like a karate pad, like the little kick pad things that guys would use. I don't know if that's the proper term for it. Anyway, Bischoff was like, doing these like, big kicks to it, and the guy was like, recoiling after all the kicks, and he would like bounce off the ropes and everything. It was all wacky and hokey. So Shane comes out and he does his little dance, which I kind of found a little infuriating because, if this guy's so pissed about Kane and he knows Kane is on the loose and he hates Bischoff so much, why is he coming out and doing his little funky little jig? He's in his button-down shirt and jeans. Again, you're not even in like workout clothes. I mean, God forbid you couldn't ask some guys around like, hey, you guys got workout clothes I could borrow? Like, I don't know. Maybe this is things I think about that aren't important, but whatever. So before the match, Bischoff gets a cheap shot on Shane and he kicks him, and Shane falls to the ground. He's like, okay, fine, bring it on. And then Bischoff actually kicks him a couple times, and Shane's down for a while. And then Shane tackles him, and then Kane's pyro comes off, and Kane's music hits. So, Shane leaves Bischoff be, and he goes after Kane. And then you think, like, okay, here's the big bad unstoppable Kane, and here's, dorky Shane McMahon in his party shirt and jeans. He's going to get destroyed. No, actually he doesn't. Shane McMahon overwhelms the monster Kane with his Shane McMahon punches. And, Shane McMahon punches are a joke in 2016, but they were also a joke in 2003. I love Shane McMahon. He does everything he can to have a great match despite not being a trained wrestler, but his punches are shit. And they're made even worse when the big bad monster Kane, who is laying out people left and right, who set a fucking guy on fire, where he's overwhelmed by all the punches being thrown to him by Shane McMahon. So, that kind of pissed me off to an unrecognizable degree. Eventually, Kane big boots him, and, Shane's down. Kane, chokeslams him under the post and into the barricade. He eventually gets the steel steps out, and he tombstones Shane onto the steps. He throws him back in the ring. Bischoff pins him, and that is the match. Bischoff wins. I mean, obviously, this is really no rating here. This is just a segment of monumental proportions. Kane eventually just walks away. Like, he's not even the main focus of the segment, even though the whole thing revolves around him. Bischoff celebrates for a bit. He goes over and celebrates with all the fans, and he goes over to the announce table, and, he high-fives Coach and King. And King's like, all right, Bischoff, you won. You beat Shane McMahon. And that's literally the end of Raw. Like, nothing else exciting happens. The WWE logo flashes, and that's it. So this is by far the longest review I've ever done for a Raw. I really don't mean for it to go this long. It was probably because I was getting off topic a lot, but I'll see all of you guys later. I hope you enjoyed this, and if you listen to the end, I mean, this is 37 minutes long, like Jesus Christ. So thank you guys for listening, and I will see all of you later.